I'm Audra McNamee. I'm a fourth-year math and computer science major and a comics and cartoon studies minor, and I'm going to talk about the work that I did over this past summer for the SURF program. I worked with Dr. Luca Mazzucato, who's affiliated with the Institute of Neuroscience, and the project that we were working on is an educational comic about psychedelics and about the science of psychedelics. So why a comic? I think that scientific comics are a really good method of communication for a number of reasons, but one of them is that science itself as a discipline is very visual. There's lots of images, there's lots of diagrams, and so using a visual medium like comics to explain science is a really natural fit, and the ability to use so many images can help explain tricky concepts very concisely and very naturally, which is really powerful. Another thing that I think helps explain science is narrative. There are lots of different kinds of narratives, historical narratives, narratives that are just factual that build upon themselves. But Dr. Mazzucato and I decided to go with a fictional narrative, a framing device around our story. So on the left here, you can see the rough draft of the cover for our comic, the second wave of psychedelics research, the complete past, present, and future of psychedelics in 28 pages or less. And on it, there are these two characters, this computer and this college researcher. And they're the two main characters of our comic. And having these two characters was really helpful because it allows us to create conversations within the comic itself, and points of disagreement and points of contention. And on a subject with as much complexity as psychedelics, it was really useful to be able to use these characters disagreeing with each other and learning from each other to truly convey the depth of the different ways of understanding psychedelics. So that's why comics, but why psychedelics? So currently we're in the second wave of psychedelics research. But what does that mean? So in order to know what that means, you have to know about the first wave of psychedelics research, which began in the 1950s and was started off as a bunch of scientific research happening in places including the United States, with lots of clinical trials, which had hopeful, rather promising results about using psychedelics to treat addiction to things like alcohol or cigarettes and depression. However, psychedelics also became affiliated outside of research institutes, but oftentimes encouraged by figures within research institutes, with cultural movements, including the anti-Vietnam War movement. And for a lot of reasons, including backlash against the anti-war movement, psychedelics were demonized to an extent perhaps greater than the actual observed impact upon people. So there's lots of external social forces that have shaped the way that we have seen psychedelics over the years. And so that just feels like an important thing to talk about and contextualize, especially considering there's lots of myths and misinformation about psychedelics that comes from the 60s, which are still believed today. And so directly noting those myths and combating it is one of the things that we can do in this comic. And then talking about the present and explaining things like Measure 109 in Oregon, which just passed in 2020, which establishes a pathway for legalized psilocybin therapy within the state. And then also talking about the potential future of psychedelics and what it might look like and what various people think that it should look like. I tried to be really careful about the information that I was gathering so that I could turn it into a comic where the visuals and the text inform each other and become something greater than the sum of their parts. So it was the biggest comics project that I have ever undertaken. And keeping all of my research together was a learning process. Figuring out how to plan all of my pages was and is a learning process. But I'm proud of the work that I've created so far. So here are some of those pages, just the first 3. There is going to be color in the final version, but these are the lines and something close to the finalized words. And that's what it is so far. I'm excited to have the final product so that people can read it. And thank you so much to people with the SURF program, and thank you so much to Dr. Mazzucato for making it possible for me to work on all of this summer. I still can't believe I got the chance to do this, and it was absolutely amazing, and I really love making science comics, so thank you for helping me do this project.